Alright, I'm ready to start rolling on. I'm going to be going from this side where the warp is over to the back, rolling some on, back and forth. So let's start at this end. I'm going to unroll just a little from my kite sticks. Give it a nice pull back and a little strumming. And just to get started, I'm going to keep a hand on this and just come around, straighten this out a little, even it up, and just start winding this on to the back beam until the bar actually hits the beam. Okay. I'm going to come back here. I can see I've got a choke tie coming up, so I'm going to take that out. Here's another choke tie. I better get that one off too. Alright, so I'm going to give it some little yanks, pull back on it, strum it, see if there's anything loose, give it a little pull. I'm just going to let it hang here on its own while I wind some on the back. Now I've got my brown paper, my craft paper, and I'm just going to tuck this in. And just start winding it around until I have one full revolution on there. And I'm trying to keep it nice and straight. And I'll come back to this side. Again, pull it a little, maybe each one separately. Move back to the back. Roll on a little more. And I put on about 2 full revolutions. I need to tighten the warp up on the back beam. So I'm going to go back to the front and take each one of my warp bouts. First I'm going to straighten it out. Then I'm going to get a really, really good grip on it and just lean back and pull it nice and tight. Do the same thing with the other half. Get a good grip on it and just lean back and really try to tighten that up. Alright, ready to go? Back to the back of the loom, to the warp beam. I'm keeping an eye on this, trying to make sure that this paper is going on really nice and straight. I'm going to make one full revolution again. Back to the front, pulling, straightening, and most important, tightening. You want your warp to be really nice and tight as you put it on the back warp beam. So I've come to another choke tie. Take that one off. Well, and you can see that there really wasn't, the choke was really doing its job. It kept those threads nice and even. They haven't really shifted in length as we're going along. So everything is staying nice and neat. I'm going to give it another tightening. When you're putting on a warp, the rule of thumb is that you need to have it as tight, at least as tight as you're going to weave it. So a lot of times I see warps that aren't very tight, and sometimes they cause problems. So tighter is better. So be sure you don't miss that step of tightening up your warp. Okay, I'm going to just put another full revolution here. And I'm running out of paper, so I'm going to put in another sheet of paper. So that's ready to go. I'll just tuck it in. Give you a little closer look at that. So I'm just tucking it right in and starting to wind on. Again, another full revolution. Back to the front, back and forth, until it's all wound on. Okay, I'll give you a close look from this side, how that's going in. All of those threads are going into the raddle. If I see a little something loose hanging up, I might just give it a little pull to straighten it up. And then I'll just let it set, let it hang, and go back to the back and wind it on. And so you can see it coming through the raddle here. If you've done a good job of winding your warp, there shouldn't be any catches or crossing over. I'd always keep an eye out for it, just in case. I have it nearly wound on. You can see I have a nice tight cylinder of warp. It's nice and firm. I'm just going to wind on these last few inches. And then we'll go around to the front and look at the warp from there. Alright, we're nearly to the end of our warp. We've got it mostly wound on. So we can just pull it off the kite sticks now. We don't need those anymore. So we'll take that off. As long as I have this loop in my hand, I'm going to go ahead and cut this right now, because we'll need to have it cut for threading the heddles. So I'll take that one off, and I'll just slide this one off. And go ahead and cut it. Cut off any little excess knots there. Alright, so you can see that our choke ties did a really good job of keeping the warp from shifting in length. It's pretty even. Both bouts are nice and even. There's a couple of little loose threads, but nothing serious, nothing to worry about. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and put in my lee sticks and get those ready to go. Take it out of the raddle and tie those lee sticks up in the back. So let's just do that next job. So I've got my two lee sticks. I'm going to put the first one in. Put this out of my way. Open this cross up, and I can see where I tied these two positions. It opens up very easily, so I'll just slide this one in. And then I'll do the same thing on the other warp bout. Find that opening, and you can see the threading cross there. I'm going to slide this one on through. So I have the first part of the cross on the lee sticks. Now I need to get the second part of the cross on the lee sticks as well. So where we cut that, it's pretty easy to just open that up, and there's that opening, and there's that opening. So I'm just going to go ahead and put the lee sticks right in there. And then I want to tie my two lee sticks together so they won't come apart and they won't fall out of my cross. So I put in a string just to make it a little easier. So I'll go ahead and tie these together. Again, not too tight. I want to be able to open that cross up, spread those threads out, so just leaving about maybe 3/4 of an inch between the two sticks, between the two lee sticks. So I'll tie the other end as well. Now our threading cross is safely guarded by the two lee sticks, and there it is, and we can take these ties off after a while. Let's leave them on for just a minute until we get these lee sticks tied up in place. All right. Now we are back around the back of the loom with the raddle. I'm going to just take these little ties off so I can open up my raddle. It's now served most of its purpose. It's going to have another little purpose here in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to just lift the threads out and set those down here, and lift the raddle out and put the top back on. I'm going to use this raddle as something to tie my lee sticks to. There are two more holes in the castle of the little weaver, and that's for storing your raddle, but for right now we're going to use it to tie our lee sticks and suspend them right here, so the threading cross will be handy for us as we're threading the heddles. Alright, I've got a couple of long threads on my lee stick. I'm just going to really put up here. I'll tie the other one up, and I'm going to tie it all the way around so it doesn't come off. I'll just tie it here. Don't need to be too fussy about this. Here. We're just suspending the leaf sticks. Okay, I'll pull this one up and around. We want it to be about the height of the eye of the heddles, maybe slightly below. And I'm suspending it from the back leaf stick, so I'll be able to see the threading cross a lot easier when I'm in front. Try to get that fairly even. All right. So there we are, ready to start threading the heddles. So now I'm going to go around to the front of the loom, take the reed off, and start arranging my heddles to make sure I have the right amount and that everything's in place to start threading the heddles. So I can reach in and see those heddles. I'm going to take the reed out for a minute just so I can see better. Let me just take that out and set that aside. Now you see I have a clear view of my heddles. So I'm going to just start out by pushing them all to the side so I can see which one is on which side. You might notice, let me see if I can get a close-up here. You can see that in the middle of each one of the harnesses, each one of the shafts, there's a connecting rod. Then this is what pushes it up as you weave. And so with that rod there, you can't move the heddles from side to side. So you have to make sure that you have all the heddles you need on each side before you begin. You also need to make sure that you have all of the heddles that you need on both sides, because it is not possible to add heddles once you start to thread your loom. So make sure you check all of that very carefully before you begin. Alright, I'm going to start moving over my heddles for the first half of the warp, and I've counted those out. I've got a little chart that I'm working from, and so I know how many heddles I need for each half of the warp. So for the first one I need 3. So for harness number 1, shaft number 1, I'm moving over 3 to the center. Put the out of my way on the side. For the next one I need 4 on shaft 2. So I'll pull those over. Put the extras against the side. And for number 3 I need 6. So let me pull those over. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There we go. So those are moved over. And I'll just continue to move over all of the heddles that I need for this first half of the warp. Alright, let's get a nice close-up of that. Here I am on shaft 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There it is. And I need 7 on that one. So I'm going to move over 7, 2, 4. There they are, and I'll just move them into the center. And I'll continue doing that for the next one, which is number 9. I also need 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You see how easy it is to count them up here at the top. I can just put my finger down and move them right over. All right, I'll continue that until I have it all finished. I've moved over all the heddles that I'll need for the first half of the warp, and I've removed the ties from that first half as well, and spread it out a little bit on my leaf sticks. You can sort of see it back there. Can you see? And so we're ready to start threading. Okay, the first thing I need to do is pull over my first little small group of heddles. I'm going to pull over 8. The first 8 are on shafts 1, 2, 3, and 4, so I'll pull those over, and 13, 14, 15, and 16, so I'll pull those over as well. Get those lined up. Those alternate from the front to the back, so I'll just get those lined up so I can see them easily. And then I'll reach through and pull forward my first 8 threads, my first 8 warp threads, and I can see them back there on the leaf stick. I can see my threading. I can see the first 2 are here. So the threading goes 16, 4, 15, 3, 14.2 and 13.1. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to use my heddle hook, which is a nice long hook. I'm going to reach on through and pull the first one, and I do have a color order. The blues are going to be in the back and the lavenders will be in the front, so I'll just carefully pulling each one into the heddle that it needs to be in. I'll take my next two. Yep. Pull the blue one through 15 and the lavender one through 3. Let's get the rest of these. So the next two. And then the one in the front. And then the last two of this group. I have all those 8. And the next thing I'm going to do is check. I always want to make sure that I check these before I tie those off. So there I am, 16, 4, 15, 3, 13, 14, 2, and 13, 1. So I have all 8 of them. I have them all in place. I'm going to move them out of the way, tie this off. Just a little overhand loop that I can pull out when I need it. So that's ready to go. Then I'll just pull over my next small group, thread those, and keep doing that until I have the whole half threaded. So we're down to our last few in this first half. So I'm just going to put these last 10 in. I have the heddles moved. Luckily it came out even, so we're look like we're on track. I've been checking carefully as I've gone along. I'm taking my time, done a nice careful job. Just reaching through, following my threading plan. This warp is going to be for a workshop that I'm taking this next weekend, so it's kind of a little more complicated than usual, but again, no matter how complicated it is, it's only one thread at a time, and as long as you're paying attention and checking, it should all go pretty smoothly. There's a few more here. And then we'll be finished with this half, and we'll be able to start on the next half. So I've got that last bunch done. I'll give it a little tie. Push it out of the way, and I'm ready to move on. Now for the first half I needed to move my heddles to the center so I could use them. I'm right-handed, so I typically warp from right to left. If you were left-handed, you'd probably be doing it just the opposite. Anyway, for the second half, I'll be pulling my heddles from the whole story I have of them over here on this side, so I don't need to move them anywhere. So I'll be moving them over and using them as I go. So I'll take off the ties now on my second warp bout and get to work on that. You might have noticed that it was a little awkward for me to reach in and thread my heddles. And I don't like to get into an awkward position while I'm threading, because you're in that position for a really long time. with our big looms, I always recommend that we get rid of take the front beam out, take the beater out, and clear the decks when we're doing the threading. Well, there's no reason that we can't do this on the little weaver. I want to show you how easy it is just to clear things out and get ready to thread. And this will make it a lot easier for you, for your body and for your threading. We've already taken off the top of the beater and the reed, and we still notice that there are a couple of things that are in the way for easy threading. So the next thing I'm going to take off is the bracket that holds the reed in place on the beater. So this is just a matter of taking off 2 screws, so all I need is a screwdriver. So let's come in here and have a look at that. I can see there's just this one screw here that I need to take off. And there's one on the other side. And I'll take that one off. And just lift that bracket out, set my screws aside. Well, that helps quite a bit, but I still have this front bar in my way, the front breast beam. So what's holding this side bar in place is this one bracket. And it's also just held in place by a screw and a nut. So I'm going to just go ahead and take that off on both sides, and I just need my socket wrench. It's a 1/2 inch socket, and a nice big Phillips screwdriver. So I need to put this tensioner down, put this in place, and just loosen this. I'll take that out. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. I'll take this one out. And make sure I hold on to my washers and pull that screw out. Once both of those brackets are loose, this whole front breast beam assembly will come on down, and not only come down, but as I push down on it, it tilts the loom into a really very good angle for threading. I can sit here and look right in and see things very easily. Okay, now that I've cleared the decks and I'm ready for threading the easy way, you just watch how easy it is for me just to reach right in, see what threads I need, and pull them through. I have an unobstructed view right into all of my shafts to see the heddles, to see everything. And this is a much easier way to do this. So I just wanted to show you this really nice unobstructed view right through the loom. I can reach right in easily, find my thread. Pull it on through, reach in, next thread, pull it on through. I'm going to go ahead and continue finishing up this second half of the warp. And when I get it all finished, I'll show you just how easy it is to get your loom back together and ready to weave again. Well, and now I've finished threading all of the heddles, and the next thing I need to do is just take the lee sticks out. They've served their purpose, and so we can just get rid of those, set those aside for the next time. So, cut this off. Just carefully pull these out. Don't want to pull any threads out of the heddles, so I'll just take my time here. Pull those out. Alright, I'm going to set those aside. I'm going to go around to the front of the loom and move my heddles back into position. Alright, I was moving my heddles over in little groups as I was threading to keep an open space, but now I need to move those all back into position before I can slay the reed. So I just take each bunch in turn, give it a pull, And then take my hand in, just push it over, take the next little bunch. Just put my whole hand in, push that over. To where they're lined up pretty well. And so on. We're going to take all of the little bunches that I threaded. Just one at a time, just ease them over. It just helps if you put your whole hand in, push from the top, push from the bottom, line them up. You don't need to be perfect at this time. They will straighten out as you weave and they'll find their place. Right now we just want to get them more or less lined up. Okay, as you can see, I've got all my heddles put back more or less into place, and I'm ready to start putting my loom back together. So let's put the first thing we'll do is we'll put the bottom bracket on so we can put the reed in for slaying the reed. Let me take care of that. Again, just our 2 screws. We're just going to put them in carefully. Screwdriver. Okay, we have the bottom of the bracket that holds the reed onto the beater, and we're going to leave the top off for a while. You'll see in a moment why. So the next thing we need to do is to get our front breast beam assembly back into place. So we'll do that. Let me move around and show you how that's going to work. So I need my 1/2-inch socket and a large Phillips screwdriver to put this back on. I'm going to take the large screw, put it through the bracket, then put the black washer on, fit that, move the whole assembly up and fit that right into that hole. Then we'll put the small washer and the nut on the inside. It's usually easier to get this started with the screwdriver. Let's see if we can do that. And once it's started, I'll put the wrench on to hold it. And I'll just get the other side in the same way and we'll be ready to go. We want it fairly snug, but just not, don't really put a lot of muscle into it, because that we'll need to move when we fold the loom up. Alright, so the front beam is back into place. We're ready to start thinking about slaying our reed. Our next job will be slaying the reed. So we need to get a few things ready for that job. So we have the top off of the beater bar, and I have my reed, and I have my leaf sticks back again, and they're going to do double duty for us. We'll use these to rest the reed on. We'll also need some of our handy little Velcro ties and a slaying hook, which is merely a thin hook. You could use your heddle hook for this, but it's nice to have a sleigh hook as well. Alright, so let's get started with that. Alright, I said our leaf sticks were going to be doing double duty, so what we're going to do is just set them right across from the breast beam to the bottom of the reed bracket, and we'll set those in there, and this is where our little ties come in. The first thing we'll do is just tie this one right to the breast beam so it doesn't fall off. We don't want our reed falling off. I'll tie the other one up. And we're just going to rest our reed right on those two Lee sticks. And I'm going to set it right between the two uprights of the beater so it keeps its place here. And then just to make sure that it doesn't slip, I'm going to go ahead and use a couple of more ties and just tie it all the way around, through one of the slots in the reed, around the Lee stick, and then around the upright of the beater. So we'll do that on both sides. Do another one of these. Alright, it's down in a slot, in a dent, around the Lee stick and around the upright. So now that reed isn't going anywhere, it's perfectly secure. Okay, we have to do a little calculation first. Before we start slaying the reed, we need to know exactly how wide the warp's going to be and what kind of pattern we'll use to slay the reed. So I know that I have 260 ends in this warp, and I also know that I need to set this at 36 ends per inch. So I have a 12 dent reed, so if I think about that, to get 36 ends per inch, I'm going to need to put 3 warp ends in every dent. Okay, so I've got 3 warp ends in every dent, so that will give me my density, my warp set. And so the next thing I need to figure out is how wide this warp is going to be so I'll be able to center it in my reed. So if I take the 260 and divide it by the 36 ends per inch, I'll find out that it is just a little over 7 inches, 7.2 inches. So I'll measure my reed, I'll find a starting point, and I'll start slaying the reed from there, putting 3 in each dent. Okay, I'll start by measuring my reed. I've got the center point marked, and if I need a little over 7 inches, so half of that is 3.5, so just a little over 3.5 will be my starting point. So I'll measure that, and I'll just put my sleigh hook up through that reed so it's in the right place. So now I'm ready to start actually pulling threads through the reed. And I'm going to take it bunch by bunch, just as I moved it over. I'll see that I did a pretty good job of getting this in the right place, so that looks right. So I'm going to just pull this open and look in here and see which thread is first. Let me get my hand out of your way. 1, 2, 3. So because I have an alternating color order, every one of it'll be a little easier to check. Every one of these will have 2 of one color and 1 of the other color. So that's handy. Okay, so I'll pull those 3 through. Now I'll come right up into the next dent right next to it. Find the next 3 threads. This will be lavender, blue, lavender. Okay, that's a good check. I can see that I've got those 3. I can look back through to make sure they're the right ones. Pull it down through. Push up through the next one. And now I just have 2. I need to open up another little package. I just pull my knot loose. Reach in. 1, 2, 3. This time it's blue, lavender, blue. So I've got that. It's always good to have little ways of checking to make sure that things are going right. All of a sudden, if something seems wrong, it probably is, and you need to stop and find out what's happening. So here's our next 3, lavender, blue, lavender. And again, I'll hold these and isolate them, pull them sideways, make sure I've got them in the right place, and then pull them through the reed. All right. So I'm going to continue to do that until I get all of my threads, all of my warp ends pulled through the reed. Let me just get a couple more here. And I can be kind of adjusting the placement of these as I go along, adjusting the placement of the heddles. Now you might have noticed that I've got my reed hook will hold itself in the reed. And what I do is I'll add a little bit of tape around it, so when I push it up through, it has just enough to hold it in place. Makes it a lot easier. It's kind of a handy little trick. All right, this is another good place to check what's happened with your threading before you actually start weaving. So keep an eye on what's going on. Just be mindful while you're doing this, and keep track of things. Sometimes you can find errors at this point, which are a lot easier to correct than later on. I have all of the threads slayed in the reed, so now it's time to get that set up, ready to go. I'm just going to take off my ties. Pull out my leaf sticks, untie those, and set the reed up in its slot. Alright, then I'll just put the top back on, wing nuts out, set that right on. Get it firmly in place, nice and tight. Alright, so now I'm ready to tie up my warp into little bunches for lashing onto that front apron rod. So we'll do that next. Okay, I'm ready to tie up my warp into little bunches for lashing onto the front apron. So I'm going to comb through it, make sure things are evened out, looking in the back, making sure there's nothing caught on anything back there. Okay, I'm going to just start by selecting about an inch. I'm not going to measure, but close to an inch wide in the reed. I'm going to comb that out, make sure it's nice and even, and just tie an overhand knot in that. I'll go on to the next one. About an inch, more or less. I don't need to measure, I don't need to count. And making a nice overhand knot. Now these don't need to be exactly the same, but they should just be close. That's good enough. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this, and then I'll show you how to lash this warp onto your front apron rod. Alright, I'm ready to begin tying the warp onto the front apron with a method called lashing on. First thing I'm going to do, well, the first thing I've done is I've cut a string. This is a very strong piece of twine. It's about 3 or 4 times as long as the warp is wide in the reed. So the next thing I'm going to do, I've just tied this up temporarily so it'll make it easier for you to see what I'm doing. I'm just going to tie this with a nice tie, just a good knot right there. I just don't want it to come loose. So then I'm going to start lashing the warp onto the beam, and what that means is I'm going to just come in between each one of these little bundles and then tie it around, come around the apron rod. Through the bundle, more or less right in the middle. I'm going to pull that up and just keep, I'm going around the bar, through the bundle, around the bar, and so on. I'm making a continuous lashing. The whole warp will be interconnected, and you'll see how handy this is later when I come to getting it just under the perfect tension. So just around. A few more here. Doesn't take long. Alright, and one more time. Right through the middle and on down to the bar. So now when I get to the bar, I'm just going to give it another good, just a square knot is fine. Don't have to do anything too fancy. I just want something that's not going to slip. I'm going to get a good pull. Feel okay. There's no slipping there, so that's fine. I can leave that there. I could trim that off. All right. So now I have the whole warp is interconnected, and so what I'm going to start doing is the first thing I'm going to do is take off these temporary ties. I don't need those anymore. And that would get in our way. And I'm just going to, let me come back here, I'll show you what I'm doing. I'm just going to tighten this up just a little bit. Then I'm going to start feeling to see how this feels. It's a little loose over here, maybe a little tight over here. I could just pulling on the bouts, pulling on the individual little bundles. I'm going to move that tension around. Now, every so often I'll just tighten it up a little bit more. Pull up. And what happens is this thread will slip on those knots, and where it's tight will become looser, and where it's loose will become tighter, and it'll all equalize out. And in pretty short order, you've got a perfectly tensioned warp. Well, you can see I've been weaving a little. I've got about an inch done. When I was just starting out, I found one little error. I had a crossed thread that I was able to repair pretty quickly. No matter how careful you are, you can always make an error. So my loom is now all ready to go to the workshop tomorrow morning, so I'm a very happy weaver. So I hope things go as well for you when you're setting up your little weaver.